Hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar on mastering the all-new Zoho Mail Admin Console's second part. I'm Yamini Durai from the Zoho Mail team and I'm excited to explore more features of the revamped Zoho Mail Admin Console with you. I want you to note that the account I'm using for the demo is a super administrator account. So if you find some of the features missing and you are an admin and your console differs from the way you see it here, then it could be because of that. Besides, if you don't have the new admin console enabled, you can do that by clicking the try new version option in your old UI. And if you don't see that option, let us know via email and we will take care of it for you. In the last session, we discussed about our all-new dashboard, organization settings, domain settings, importing users and groups from G Suite, using CSV file, and more. In this session, we will discuss in detail about data migration, email routing, spam protection lists, among others. So let's start off with migration. One of the simplest solutions to bring the data from your old email service provider to Zoho Mail is using data migration. Zoho Mail offers you a simple to-do migration process from popular email service providers like Google Workspace, Office 365, and Microsoft Exchange. For other services, you can use protocols such as IMAP and POP. So before we start off with the migration, there are few practices you must follow. All the users for whom you would like to process migration should be created in Zoho Mail before the migration process. Something to note here is that if you want to migrate data of your user account, let's say charles@abc.com from Google Workspace to Zoho Mail, the destination email address has to have the same username. The domain can be different, but the username can't be. You can create an email address that says charles@xyz.com or charles@cdb.com. It doesn't matter as long as the username is same. Migration depends on two servers, a source and a receiving server. Try to run a sample migration with a less number of users like 2 to 5 in order to understand the source behavior better. Be cautious of what you set as maximum connection limit, because by setting the connection limit, you are letting us know how many times simultaneously we can connect to your source server. So set the number by knowing what is ideal for your source server. Prioritize your users' data to get the data of high-profile users first. If you don't prioritize, we won't know which data to bring in first. And last but not the least, choose the right type of migration that is suitable for your organization's data. Now the question is how to identify the right type of migration. Now selecting the right type of migration is easy when you're choosing based on the application. For example, if you want to migrate data from Google Workspace, you can go with the G Suite option. But if your provider is not listed here, you can migrate your data using either IMAP or POP protocol. While IMAP and POP both can migrate data, there are certain advantages if you use IMAP. Some of them are: IMAP allows you to migrate the emails with their respective folders and read or unread status, whereas POP, the emails will be migrated to inbox as unread emails. While IMAP supports multiple clients, POP only supports one client. The migration report of IMAP is much more detailed than that of POP's. If you want to know more details and difference between IMAP and POP, do take a look at our help documentation. So how does this work? I'll start off with a demonstration and show you everything in our user interface. I'm going to start off my demonstration with Google Workspace migration. To start with that, simply click Start Data Migration and choose your protocol or application of choice. In our case, it would be G Suite. Once that's done, provide a name for your migration. This name can be anything and is provided only for your future references. If you are an enterprise organization with multiple admins managing your mail accounts, it would be ideal to have a naming convention that can help you communicate clearly. After providing a name for your migration, you will be asked to provide us the superadmin email address, a service account email address, and upload a secret key file. You can get this information from your Google Developers Console. If you have any trouble in getting this, you can use our detailed help documentation available at our website. I'm just going to provide my superadmin email address, service account email address, upload my secret key file. Once done, just click Authenticate. Now that the authentication has been successful, you will be taken to the settings page. You can provide a name for your settings, but because I have already done this process, it's not asking me to provide one. So you can provide a name in your name section, and that name will be used to identify your settings in the saved settings section right here. So select the applications you want to migrate data from. You can bring in your mail, calendar, contacts data, but something to note about calendar migration is that your domain in Google Workspace should be the same as in Zoho Mail. Previously, I had told you that having the same domain in both servers is not necessary for email data migration, but it is mandatory for calendar migration. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you don't want data from any of these listed applications, you can simply uncheck them, and the data associated with that application will not be migrated. You can also specify the folders you would like to migrate. If you want all the folders brought to your Zoho Mail, then you can simply click all folders. But that doesn't mean you can't provide an exclude list. You can say, I don't want my spam folder or my CC folder. It's completely up to you. And the folders that you have given in the exclude section will not be migrated. But if you have specific folders in mind to migrate, then you can click the specific folders option and provide the folders you would like to migrate. And in this case, only the folders that you have provided here will be migrated and everything else will be ignored. So I'm going to migrate all my folders and just exclude my spam. Once that's done, you can also specify which emails to migrate with respect to their date. You can bring in all your emails or emails that are only from a specific date range. You can enable POP access for the migrated emails. This will allow your users to access migrated emails using POP protocol in other email clients. Now, after configuring all the necessary settings, click Proceed. You can now set a maximum connection limit. Now, what is a maximum connection limit? It is the maximum number of connections accepted by a server at a particular point of time. For example, if your maximum connection limit is 5, then Zoho Mail will try to migrate the data of 5 users at the same time simultaneously. Like I mentioned before, it is very important to know what is your ideal connection limit for your sending server. It can cause the migration to topple if you give a maximum connection limit that is way too high or way too difficult for your sending server to handle. Now, after providing your maximum connection limit, you can let us know when to pause the migration with respect to the status of your storage. This is important because if your storage reaches to a particular point, you will not be able to receive emails to your mailboxes. Now by default, we will stop the migration at 80%, but you can go with 95% at your own personal risk. So after providing these mandatory information, click Create. You have now successfully configured your migration. Now all that's left to do for us is to add the user details. For Google Workspace migration, you can add users using these three options. You can manually add users one by one, for which you will have to map a G Suite email address to a Zoho Mail email address and then set a priority. Once done, you can simply click add and the email account will be migrated. This method can work only if you want to migrate a handful of accounts, but for a bulk migration, it could be exhausting to map accounts this way. In that case, you can import the user data using a CSV file. The CSV file should contain the standard information like source email address, destination email address, and the priority. You can also download a sample file to help you with the process from right here. Once you have the CSV file ready, simply click Browse Files and upload it. Once you have uploaded your CSV file, you will see the users with the right source and destination email address will be mapped and will be added automatically to your migration list. Some of the disadvantages of CSV file is that you can't select the users you would like to migrate. You can delete them after they get listed here by clicking the delete icon, but you can't choose before that process happens. Secondly, CSV files are prone to errors, so to avoid these difficulties, the simplest way to map your destination source email addresses is by using the fetch option in Google Workspace migration. So when you simply click fetch option, you will notice that all the users under your Google Workspace account are listed. You can go ahead and check the user and click add selected users. Now you can start the migration and you can just go away. You can perform any other task in your admin console if you would like. You don't have to wait on the same page for the migration to complete. And like I mentioned in the previous webinars, the server details and the settings that you associated with that server will be stored for your future uses. Now, this is highly helpful when you do your migration in batches. You can refer to them by going to Save Server Details and Save Server Settings from right here. Similar to how we performed Google Workspace migration, we can also perform it for Office 365 and Microsoft Exchange. I'm going to show a quick rundown of the same. Starting with Office 365, I can simply go ahead, click Add New Server Details, Office 365. Now I'm going to give a name to my migration. You will notice that you need a source admin email and a source admin password. I'm going to quickly provide that information. Now, after providing the source admin email and source admin password, click Add. Now, something to note about the source admin email address is that you need that admin to have the application impersonation role. You can do this by going to your Office 365 Exchange admin portal. Detailed steps on how to do this is available in our help documentation for your reference. So after you have sorted everything and you are taken to the settings, you can now create your own settings for this server. So provide a name for your settings, which is again not available to me because I already did this, but it will be there for you if you're doing it for the first time. Now you can also choose the application from which you want to migrate data from. And finally, You can also choose which folders to migrate, which emails to migrate, and whether you want to provide POP access or not. Once that's done, click proceed and give your maximum connection limit and pause migration limit and click create. Now your migration has been successfully created. Now, just like we did it for Google Workspace migration, you can add users using these three options. You can click add to manually map the Office 365 email address and Zoho Mail email address. You can also import a CSV file and download a sample file right here. But you can also fetch like we did for Google Workspace. But something to note here is that you have to sign in before you can fetch the users. It does not happen automatically like it did for Google Workspace. Now, once you fetch the users by signing in, you can list your users here and start with your migration process. In case you are using Microsoft Exchange Server, you can simply click Microsoft Exchange, but one thing you will notice is that you need a source server address. Apart from the source admin email and source admin password, with application impersonation role, you would also need source server address. And another notable difference is that you can't fetch your users in case of Microsoft Exchange. You have to manually do it or use a CSV file. Now, if you are using any other email providers apart from Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, you can always use IMAP or POP based migration, which is fairly simple to use. Simply go ahead, click create, add new server details, and then select IMAP and provide a name for your migration like usual. Even though we have a dedicated migration for Google Workspace, we have a dedicated Gmail support in our IMAP as well. This is because Gmail has a particular way of behavior with respect to its labels and copying the emails during migration. To know in detail about this, do refer to our help documentation. But if you want to migrate from any other email provider, you can simply do that by clicking others and providing the source server address of that particular email provider. Once you have provided the source server address, choose your security, which could be SSL or none, and then provide your path prefix. A path prefix tells Zoho Mail where to look for your emails to migrate. Although it's not mandatory, it will make sure your data gets migrated perfectly. By default, your source server certificate will be checked, but you can choose to skip this by checking this option. You have to remember that if the connection is insecure, then you could be in trouble. Now, once that's done, click add. You can now select which folders to migrate and which emails to migrate and whether you want to give POP access or not. Once you have decided all this and given the configuration, click proceed. Again, similar to what we did previously, provide us a maximum connection limit, a pause migration limit, and then click create. Now we have successfully created your migration. You can now manually map the users, but in this case, you will have to provide the source email account's password as well. So once you have mapped it, it will be added here and you can simply click the start button right here to start with your migration. Performing migration at Zoho Mail is a fairly easy and a simple process to start with. You just have few nuances that you can understand with the help of our help documentation. Now that you have all the data and the accounts ready to use, it's time to talk about email routing. Email routing is a process that allows you to copy or redirect emails based on the given conditions. That is, you can carbon copy a recipient's email to a completely different email address. This helps you define the email delivery behavior of your organization, allowing you to coexist with different email service providers at the same time. You can configure email routing in Zoho Mail by navigating to the Mail Settings section in your left pane right here and clicking on Email Routing and then on Configuration. If you have more than one domain configured to your account, when you click Add, you will notice that they ask you to choose the domain to enable email routing. So select the domain you would like and then provide your destination host. The destination host can be a domain name or MX record or an IP address of a valid email server that can receive emails directly. If you provide a domain name in the destination host column, then the emails will be directed towards the MX address configured in the domain's DNS. And if you provide MX or IP address, we will directly deliver the respective emails to the respective servers. But before we can do that, we will also have to verify the deliverability of your provided destination. To do that, you will have to provide us a verification email address right here that is hosted under the provided destination. So let me just add my destination host and provide my verification email address. But what if the verification email address I want has to match with my destination host? By default, it will be mapped under the domain you want to enable hosting for. But you can change it to the destination host by clicking Change Domain to match the provided destination option and then type in the verification email address. So once that's done, click Add. The verification process of your destination's deliverability will start, and it might take some time. You can't change to a different section during this process and will have to stay put on this page. After successful verification, your routing will be added like so. Under each routing, you can configure the email delivery type, sending bounce message option, routing for group members, and much more by navigating to basic settings and the advanced settings. Email routing serves different purposes for different organizations. To fulfill your organization's routing requirement, you need to configure appropriate email delivery type. Zoho Mail offers you 4 different delivery types, starting with split delivery. Say you're an organization with 2 different email service providers where you are hosting one of the email accounts in Zoho Mail and host the rest with a different service provider. When you configure split delivery, the emails addressed to the recipient that exist in Zoho Mail will be delivered to the respective mailboxes hosted at Zoho Mail as usual. But the emails addressed to the recipients who do not exist in Zoho Mail will be routed to the destination server address instead of getting bounced. But say you want all the emails you receive at Zoho Mail to be routed to the destination server. In that case, you can use dual delivery. If you enable dual delivery, all the emails sent to the accounts that exist in Zoho Mail will be forwarded to the destination server. But if the account does not exist in Zoho Mail, then the email will be bounced back as usual. This is ideally used if you have email retention or archival services enabled elsewhere. You can also choose to not retain Zoho Mail's copy by clicking this checkbox, Do not retain Zoho Mail's copy, right here. While split delivery forwards only the emails of non-existing mailboxes and dual delivery forwards only the emails of existing mailboxes, the email routing option will forward the emails to the destination server irrespective of whether the mailbox account exists or does not exist in Zoho Mail. If the mailbox exists in Zoho Mail, it will be delivered at both Zoho Mail and the destination server. And if the mailbox does not exist in Zoho Mail, then the email will be delivered at the destination server. You can again choose to not retain Zoho Mail's copy by checking this checkbox. But say you only want the emails of a specific user to be routed. In that case, you can use custom routing. You can add the accounts you want to enable routing to right here by clicking the Add button. And that's it. The email sent to the accounts listed here will be forwarded to the destination server, and just like before, you can choose to retain or not retain Zoho Mail's copy. Sometimes there can be server-side difficulties that can cause the email to bounce. In such cases, you can choose to send bounce messages informing the sender that their email has been bounced by enabling send bounce message option. And you can also route all the group emails to all group members' mailboxes by enabling routing for group members option. Apart from that, in the advanced settings, you can also decide to which user your routed email should get forwarded to by enabling recipient username change option. By enabling this, you can change the username part of an email address and send all the emails that are to be routed to that account. So say you have configured split delivery and enable recipient username change, the emails that are sent to the non-existent Zoho Mail accounts will be forwarded to the recipient you configure here. To be more clear, all the emails that are supposed to be forwarded with respect to the routing configuration that you set up will be forwarded to the username or the address that you provide here. This is particularly helpful when you want to back up all your routed emails in a single account. And similarly, if you want to change the domain part of the email address, then you can use the recipient domain name change option. And finally, criteria-based routing to establish a routing behavior for your organization. Here you can set conditions, and only the emails that satisfy that condition or criteria that you set here will be routed. For example, if I set a condition that the recipient is charles@wptraining.today, then all the emails where the recipient is this particular address will be routed. Now that you have all the settings established, you can enable your email routing by going to status right here or in the routing details section right here. Apart from this, you can also establish inbound gateway and outbound gateway for your emails. Ideally, all your email travel from the sending server to the receiving server by gathering the MX information from the email addresses domains DNS. But by adding an inbound gateway to your organization, you can define an additional server through which the email sent to your organization has to pass through. This feature is ideally used when the administrator wants to process the emails for spam besides the existing spam processing filters. So when configured, the emails from the sender will go to sending server, which will then collect the MX details from the DNS, which will forward the email to the inbound server, and only if the inbound server approves the email, then the email will be delivered to the receiving server, which will be finally sent to the recipient. So you can see that it's an additional filter for your emails. You can enable this by navigating to the inbound gateway section right here and providing the IP address of your gateway. You can also add a range of IP addresses with the help of IP subnet mask. If you find it difficult to know which IP addresses will be covered, you can use open source IP subnet calculators to help you along the way. Now, sometimes certain emails may come without going through the inbound gateway that you configured. By default, these emails will be delivered to your mailboxes. But if you want to reject the emails that does not go through your inbound gateway, then you can enable reject non-inbound gateway emails option. Similar to how your incoming emails are processed typically for spam filtering using inbound gateway, you can also configure outbound gateway to process all the emails that go out of your organization. This is typically used if you have third-party archival systems established. All you need to do is to go to the Outbound Gateway section and provide the MX or IP address through which the email should pass. You can apply this to all users or for selected users using the selected users and accept selected users option. One thing to note is that with or without configuring an outbound gateway, sometimes your emails can bounce even with the right recipient address. In such cases, those emails will be listed here in the retry emails segment. Apart from establishing an inbound gateway to protect your organization from spam, you can also use Zoho Mail's own spam protection list to have a targeted approach by giving your own sets of users, IP addresses, or domains to allow or block. You can access those lists by going into spam control, and you can see that we have allowed list, blocked list patterns, and trusted list right here. Now under the allowed list, you can block emails or domains. Now you might notice that we have one allowed list and a trusted list. The difference is that when a domain or email address is added to the allowed list and you have not defined the action to be taken for SPF fail, the email from the listed domain and email addresses can still end up in the spam folder. But when you add a domain, email address, or IP address to the trusted list, it will be directly delivered to your mailbox, ignoring all spam checks. With great power comes great responsibility. So in a way, by adding the entities to trusted list, you are asking Zoho Mail to trust your configuration blindly and let those emails in. That is why it is important to be careful with this feature. Do not add entities to the trusted list unless you are 200% sure that the emails are legitimate. Even though we discussed this feature in the previous webinar, I would like to show you our new addition, block list patterns. Using this, you can add regular sender, subject, or content patterns to your spam emails. For example, you can say emails with a subject sale cannot be delivered to me and should be moved to spam automatically. Now this will be followed blindly even if the emails pass SPF tests. And that leaves us towards the end of our session, that is export mail account. Now ideally, user accounts are backed up if an employee leaves your organization or for legal purposes. So if you want to export a complete mail account, you can do that by navigating to export mail account and clicking schedule new export. And you can select the users for whom you would like to export and select the mails you would like to export, and if you want to encrypt, you can choose the encryption and provide a password for the same and click export as zip. And that's it, your export will be done. And another thing you can also do is restore deleted emails by going to the deleted email recovery option under security and compliance. Now when you add a recovery, we will make sure we recover those emails for you. And something to note here is that we can only recover emails up to 25 days. So keep that in mind before starting your recovery process. And that's it. Even though your admin console is full of features that gives you ample opportunities to manage your mailboxes, we tried to give you a quick crux on the sought after features in the new admin console. You can ask any questions you have to our support executives by communicating them via email. And thank you for joining us at this webinar. I hope you found this helpful. This is Yamini Durai signing out.